Turn to Matthew chapter 14. Continue looking at the miracles of Christ. Matthew 14, we'll read verses 13 through 21. All four gospel writers give account of this miracle. When Jesus heard of it, that is, the beheading of John the Baptist, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. When the people heard thereof, that is, that Jesus had gone to this desert place, they followed him on foot out of the cities, going around along the coast. And Jesus went forth, saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them. And he healed their sick. So there you have a mass healing, another miracle. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart. Give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down in the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. And looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Again, all 4 gospel writers give account of Jesus feeding well over 5,000 people. It was 5,000 men, besides women and children. You could be looking at 15,000 to 20,000. But anyway, it's feeding over 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The recipients of this miracle, well over and in excess of 5,000 people. Matthew records, verse 21, And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. And these did not merely eat, they were filled. Matthew and Mark both record, Matthew 14:20, and they did all eat and were filled. And Mark, in Mark 6:42, we see the same. Luke writes, Luke 9, verse 17, and they did eat and were filled, and were all filled. No one went away hungry. John writes, John 6, verse 12, when they were filled. 5 loaves, 2 fishes, well over 5,000 people partake until they're filled. They can keep eating until they are filled. And after all were filled, this is what's even more incredible, there was more left over than what they began with. They ended up with 12 basketfuls. 5 loaves and 2 fishes do not require 12 baskets full. So they end up with more than what they had begun. It's an absolutely astounding miracle. It shows us that the Lord does far in excess of arithmetic. It's a marvelous display of the fact that Jesus can. It is a manifestation of Christ's ability to create. It is also a demonstration of His mastery over the natural realm. It is a declaration that He can go above and beyond an impossible situation. This particular miracle is a vivid illustration of Christ's power and Christ's compassion as well. It points to the insufficiency of our temporal resources, and it highlights Christ's wisdom and Christ's power. This miracle, like all of Christ's miracles, is a confirmation of who He is. Who He is. And we need constant confirmation of who He is, because we tend to forget who He is. So I want to speak on the miraculous provision in an impossible situation. Consider first of all the background to the miracle. Following the restoring of sight to two blind men, casting the demon from a mute man, Jesus would move through towns and villages, teaching, preaching, and healing. We see that in Matthew 9, verse 35. So there's other healings, other miracles going on. And seeing the multitudes and their deep needs of soul, Matthew 9:36, He was moved with compassion on them. Compassion, of course, is entering into the situation of others with a desire to bring relief. Jesus, after He healed many, He gave authority, He gave power to the apostles to cast out demons and to heal diseases, and He sent them forth. He sent them forth telling them that they would be hated, they would be severely persecuted along the way. Now it was during this time that John the Baptist was imprisoned and beheaded by the order of Herod. After John the Baptist was murdered, his broken-hearted disciples, the disciples of John the Baptist, came to the prison, took his body, buried it, and went and told Jesus. Matthew records, Matthew 14, verse 12, and his, that is John the Baptist, disciples, the students and followers of John the Baptist, came to the prison, took up the body, and buried it, and went and told Jesus. Mark records Mark 6, verse 29, and when his, John the Baptist, disciples heard of it, that is, the beheading, they came and took up his corpse and laid it in a tomb. They would leave the cemetery and they would go to where Jesus was. And the compassionate Jesus was the answer to their broken hearts. He was what they needed. The apostles returned from their mission. Mark 6, verse 30, and the apostles gathered themselves together unto Jesus. That's a good gathering point. And told him all things, that is, about their mission. Both what they had done and what they had taught. Luke records, Luke 9, verse 10, and the apostles, when they had returned, that is, from their mission, told him all that they had done. So these apostles have returned from their mission. They no doubt are weary, in need of spiritual refreshment. We gather that. Notice Mark 6, verse 31. And he said unto them, the apostles, come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while. So he sees that they're weary, and he tells them to come apart. So Christ and the apostles, Mark 6, verse 32, get into a boat, and they departed into a desert place by ship, privately. Matthew records, Matthew 14:13, that they departed hence by ship into a desert place, apart. Luke says in Luke 9, verse 10, a desert place belonging to the city called Bethsaida. So it was near to Bethsaida, but at the same time it was away from the city of Bethsaida. And Jesus and the apostles resort to this place. It was on the northeastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, predominantly Jewish. The townspeople, seeing Jesus and the apostles leaving, Matthew 14, verse 13, they follow on land. And when the people heard thereof, that is, that Jesus and the apostles had headed to the other side, they followed him on foot out of the cities. So people have come from all the cities in that area. Mark records, Mark 6, verse 33, and the people saw them departing. They heard that he departed, and some saw. And many knew him. That is, they knew of the miracles that he had done. And it says they ran afoot thither out of all the cities. And Mark records, and out went them. That is, they got there before Jesus and the apostles got there by boat and came together unto him. So now you have this multitude. Luke records, Luke 9, verse 11, and the people, when they knew it, that is, that Jesus and the apostles were going to this desert place, followed him. John records the reason why they followed him. John 6, verse 2, and a great multitude followed him because, the reason follows, they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. The reason they follow is they've seen his miracles. It's not because of who he is. It's because of what he has done. They view Christ as a miracle worker. They have no real perception of His person. And well over 5,000 people have gathered. It's basically a self-serving multitude. Matthew and Mark record Matthew 14:14, Mark 6:34. This is the second time now. He was moved with compassion toward them. And Matthew writes, He healed their sick. He healed their sick. Mark says He began to teach them many things. So He healed and He taught. And Luke records in Luke 9 verse 11, He received them. That's His grace and mercy. And spake unto them of the kingdom of God. And healed them that had need of healing. The teaching and the healing lasted throughout the day. As evening begins to approach, the apostles begin to become alarmed by how many people there were. And the fact that they had nothing to eat. They see a problem. And in their anxiety, they approach Christ. Notice Matthew 14, verse 15. Consider the spirit in which they approach Christ. It's a spirit of anxiety. And when it was evening, His disciples came to Him saying, This is a desert place. So they see a problem with the place. This is a desert place. And the time is now past. They see a problem with the time. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. They begin to instruct Christ. Notice Mark's account, Mark 6, verse 35. And when the day was now far spent, His disciples came unto Him and said, This is a desert place, and now the time is far past. Send them away, that they may go into the country round about into the villages and buy themselves bread. For they have nothing to eat. They make it sound like it's about them. They have nothing to eat. That's not what they were worried about. What they were worried about is we don't have anything to give them. They have nothing to eat. These apostles, they see the situation very clearly. We're in a desert place. They can see that very clearly. We're in a place that is not conducive to food. They saw that clearly. We are also in a place void of what these people need. They could see that clearly. The people are many. They could see that clearly. They need food. They could see that clearly. It's getting late. They could see and feel that clearly as well. We do not have the means to feed these people. They could see all this very clearly. And by what they could see, their reasoning is very logical. Send the multitude away, that they may buy themselves victuals. So there they are. They're very aware of the situation. But what they did not see, they could see everything else, but what they did not see was the solution was standing right there with them. That they could not see. They just witnessed Him healing 2 blind men. They just witnessed Him casting out a demon, and then prior to that, everything they've witnessed. It may be, when they said, send the multitude away, that they were just being practical about how to meet the needs of the crowds. Very possible. Or it could be, these people are an annoying problem. This is an annoyance. Rather than a people who needed compassion. But regardless, they saw the people as an impossible situation. Whatever their motive was, send them away. They saw this as an impossible situation. But Jesus saw a people in great need. And He saw the multitude as an opportunity to minister. They see them as an impossible problem or an annoyance, whatever. In the minds of the apostles, the only solution they could see to the problem was, send them away. That was based upon what they could see. We've already said what they see very clearly. And oh, how prone we are to limit ourselves to the proposed solutions of man. But don't ever forget, Jesus can do what is beyond the calculations of man. Jesus can do what is beyond the solutions of man. So let's look at the miracle itself. The apostles, we can all identify, are face to face with a great need. We've all been there. They are face to face with what they see is an impossibility. They are face to face with an insufficiency. Face to face with a meagerness and inadequacy in their means. Jesus takes the initiative in revealing their insufficiency. Jesus actually directs them to see. Lays stress upon it. Their insufficiency. When this multitude of well over 5,000 come to Christ, Jesus asked Philip a question for the purpose of testing the thought process of the apostles. You see, they had a thought process. And their thought process was accurate except for one thing. Jesus wasn't in their thought process. Notice in John 6, verse 5 and 6. When Jesus then lifted up His eyes and saw a great company come unto Him, He saith unto Philip, Whence shall we buy bread, that these may eat? And this He said to prove Him, for He Himself knew what He would do. Always does. Always does. Now, why did he ask Philip? Well, from John 1, verse 44, Philip was from Bethsaida. That's where they're near at this point. So, Philip would have had knowledge of local resources. So he asked Philip, Philip, where should we go to buy bread? Philip answered in John 6, verse 7. So Philip had already been doing some calculating in his mind. We're very prone to do that. We begin to calculate. People don't do it with their minds anymore. They get out their phones and have that do it. But anyway, 200 penny worth of bread. He said, I've already got it figured out. 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. Philip, by his calculations, had figured that 200 days of wages, that's nearly 55% of a yearly income, could not possibly buy enough bread to meet the need, even if everyone just took a little. So there's a calculation of what it would take to feed the multitude. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with calculating. It's how we calculate. You leave Jesus out of your calculations are greatly skewed. Andrew comes. Now, Andrew also is from Bethsaida, according to John chapter 1. He comes and declares, there's a boy here in the crowd, and I've noticed that he has 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fishes. Notice John 6, verse 8 and 9. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, there is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. Andrew also has done some calculating. He says, but what are they among so many? So Jesus has brought them to realize, or we should say they already realized it, he's just emphasizing it. Approximately what it would take to feed this multitude and what they have on hand. 5 loaves and 2 small fishes. It's 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. Barley loaves is what the poor people had. So they're far short of 200 penny worth of bread. They're not even in the ballpark. They've been brought to the realization. It's been emphasized to them of the Lord. You don't have nearly enough. You don't have nearly enough. What they had was only a drop in the bucket compared to the enormous need. And there's Jesus in their midst. They have personally witnessed Him performing miracles, manifesting time and time again that He is more and greater than any situation. And the only solution they see is, Lord, you got to send them away. There's Jesus in their midst. They perceive that over 5,000 people and the little that they did possess, they perceive that as an insurmountable problem. And their solution, send them away. Send them away. There He is in their midst. And their proposed solution has its basis in the need of the multitude and their lack of means. Every proposed solution must have a basis. And that was the basis of their solution. The need is too great, and we have insufficient means. But Jesus says to them, Matthew 14:16, they need not depart. They don't need to do that. That's not the only solution, is what Jesus is telling them. There's something more. Jesus gives instruction. Matthew 14:16, Mark also records it, and so does Luke. He said, give ye them to eat. They don't need to depart, but I want you to do something. Give ye. Now again, it could simply grammatically read, give them to eat. But it's give ye. I want you to do it. It's personal. Give ye them. There's 12 of them. There's over 5,000 of the multitude. They have 5 loaves and 2 fish. Give ye them to eat. They had said, send them away. And Jesus could have done that. He could have done that. But then they would have never seen this miracle had he done that. Give ye them to eat. That's an impossible task. That cannot be done by man. He's telling them to do something that they in and of themselves could not possibly do. Give ye them. Again, the ye is the 12, and it's emphatic. Give ye. He's calling special attention to it. Give ye them. Well over 5,000. Emphasizing the enormity of the task is what Jesus is doing. You see, Jesus doesn't come to us and say, oh, it's okay, that's just a small problem. That's not what the Lord does. He's saying to them, you have a massive problem here. And you have no solution to it. He's not minimizing the situation. But He's the answer to the situation. You may be coming unglued. Well, what do? We can't do this. And Jesus comes and says, you know what? You're right. You're 100% right. And let me remind you just how little you do have. That's what He's doing here. He's emphasizing the impossibilities. Notice their response. Matthew 14, verse 17. We have here but. That's an important word. It's used to emphasize what they had. Again, it could have said, we have here 5 loaves and 2 fishes. That's not what it says. We have here but. He's emphasizing 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And John says in John 6 verse 9 that they were barley loaves, again that which was common among the poor, and that the fish were small. The fish were small. The emphasis is on their paltry means. That is the emphasis of the apostles. Then Mark records, Mark 6:37, shall we go and buy 200 pennyworth of bread and give them to eat? Jesus says, feed them. Well, Lord, you want us to go and spend 55% of a yearly income Is that what you want us to do? There's a tone of sarcasm in those words. Shall we go and buy 200 pennyworth of bread? Jesus is right there. He's speaking to them, and their focus, and they're absolutely consumed with how little they have. That's what they're consumed with. We've all done it. How little we have. How little we have. That becomes the focus. They were focused and consumed with their insufficiency. And Jesus comes along and reemphasizes it. Says, yeah, you're right. You don't have nearly enough. Jesus' response to their response is a further command. Matthew 14:18. Bring them the 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish hither to me. Bring them to me. He's declaring His accessibility, His approachability. He's inviting them to draw closer to Him. You have to draw close to bring. Bring them hither to me. Notice, bring them hither to me. In other words, I'm not moving. I'm standing right here. Bring them to me. Bring them to me. Bring them hither to me. This is the how. Jesus is telling them how. Give ye them to eat. Give ye them to eat. And here's how you do it. You bring what you have to me. This is also the solution. Bring them hither to me. Is the solution to 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient. 5 loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many? This is the solution to those 2 statements. Bring them hither to me. Now in those words, bring them hither to me, the emphasis and the answer to the situation is me. Me. In the hands of the apostles, they have 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. That's what they have on hand. But in the hands of Jesus, it's far more than 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. When will we learn what's in our hand is not equivalent to what is put in His hand? Not even the same thing. Nowhere close. Jesus gives further instruction. Matthew 14:19, He commanded the multitude to sit down in the grass. This is explained in the other accounts, Mark 6, Luke 9, John 6. He told the apostles to cause the people to sit down in companies of hundreds and fifties. Jesus then takes the loaves and the fish. Matthew says, took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. They don't even look the same in Jesus' hands as they do in the lad's basket and in the hands of the apostles. And when He had taken the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, Luke says, and He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. John says, and Jesus took the loaves. And there's Jesus in a place of seeming impossibility, with their paltry, insufficient, and inadequate means in his hands. Not enough in the lad's basket. Not enough in the apostles' hands. But in Jesus' hands, enough and more. Enough and beyond. So you see, it's not about our means. It's about whose hands our means are in. In the hands of the lad, in the hands of the apostles, nothing more than 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But in his hands, miraculous possibilities. There is Jesus, with their insufficient means. And at that point, all 4 gospel writers give account that Jesus looked up to heaven and gave thanks to the Father for those 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He's setting an example to them. And then he commands the apostles, after he had given thanks, to pass out the food amongst the multitudes. Matthew records there in Matthew 14:19, gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. Mark writes, he brake the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And the 2 fishes divided he among them all. Luke writes, he gave to the disciples to set before the multitude. And John writes, he distributed to the disciples, and disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. Remember, he brake the loaves. 5 loaves among 12 apostles. He divided them up. So he'd have to break the loaves. 2 small fish divided he amongst the 12 apostles. And then Jesus does the miraculous. 5 loaves, 2 small fish. And the apostles go from person to person. And I imagine it got down to the last piece of bread, and the last piece of fish. But by the next person, there was enough. And by the next person, there was enough. See, what we expect the Lord to do is to give us all the means right now, and then we'll count it out and make sure it's enough. That's how we operate. But they just kept handing it out, handing it out, handing it out. And with each person they came to, there was enough. Well, how do you explain that? The Lord. That's the only explanation. It's almost comical to read commentators and trying to explain this. Well, he shrunk their stomach. Just ridiculous stuff. However he did it, he did it. There can be no question. So as they distributed the loaves and the fish, they were witnessing something that was unexplainable. They were witnessing an unexplainable multiplication of means. The Lord can multiply beyond the tables of multiplication. Far beyond. And they're witnessing this. The impossible was happening right before their eyes. And I believe as they went from person to person, their wonder and their awe is being multiplied as well. Now they'd get over it very quickly, as we all do. They would forget about it soon. But each one in that multitude took as much as they wanted. This guy here, he may have grabbed 3 pieces of bread. Another person may have grabbed 2. Another person may have grabbed 1. But each one took what they wanted. Each one took what they wanted. And they were abundantly satisfied. And then Jesus told the apostles, this is my favorite part, gather the leftovers. They've all eaten. They're all full. Now go where they've sat and gather the leftovers. It didn't matter how many there were. It didn't matter how meager their means. There was enough for all and more. All 4 gospel writers give the account that they gathered the fragments. All 4 mention that word, fragments. And they filled 12 basketfuls. A fragment is a part broken away. It's not a crumb. It's a part broken away. A broken or detached piece. This guy takes a piece of bread, takes what he wants, and says, you know what, I've had enough. Sets it down on the ground. Go gather the fragments. There was enough for all and more. 12 basketfuls. And John writes in John 6:13, they gathered them together. Imagine the wonder and the awe as they gathered what was left over. And they began to fill their baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. They began to fill their baskets with which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Jesus could have, and it still would have been a marvelous thing, just given them exactly what they needed. And that would have been marvelous. But he gave over and above. He gave over and above. And I imagine those apostles ate that food later. So Jesus did not just feed well over 5,000 people with paltry means. He provided over and above. This was more, there was more left over again than what they began with. They needed a minimum of 200 pennyworth of bread. And all they have is 5 loaves, 2 small fishes. And over 5,000 people took what they wanted and were filled. Oh, what Jesus can do. And none of the apostles, as long as they lived, could ever explain how Jesus did what he did. Couldn't explain it. If you could explain everything there is about Jesus, he'd have to be pretty small. He's unexplainable. You can't explain it. But they came away knowing, again, they'd soon forget. They came away knowing at that moment, he can. He can. And that is how we ought to live our lives. He can. He can. This is all we got, but he can. He can. Brother Ben, if you come and lead us verse of song. Let's all